G'day and welcome again to the Campfire Project panel discussion. And today I have with me, first of all, Chantal Gerardy, who is a Facebook strategist. How are you, Chantal?
Amazing, thank you.
And excellent. And we also have Michael Haan, who is the founder of Care to Grow. How are you, Michael?
Really good, Alan. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's just going to be the three of us today because our fourth panelist wasn't able to make it, caught up with the technologies, etc. So we've been talking, Michael, you had mentioned about one of the things that you've noticed a lot is that people don't speak up, and that people need to find find their voice to tell their stories.
Yeah.
We know that quite often when people do, it's done in a way that is inappropriate because they've held it down for so long. There's a lot of emotions involved in it. I know, Chantal, that your expertise is in the area of social media, and so you will see that it comes down to privacy issues, but the way people portray themselves online and about how they protect their online reputation. So I think there's a lot here we can talk about in that particular area. But Michael, you had kicked us off earlier on with a suggestion about what to talk about today. So what have you noticed with the way people have been losing their voice, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good point, Alan. So what I'm finding is a lot of people that I'm looking after, and it's very much based around their relationship with money, but it's around life really. And I suppose the behaviours and patterns that I see around money. But what I see a lot of is people holding back and not telling their truths, and they do bottle that up. But more importantly, where does that come from? So really, it sort of comes from that sort of subconscious, that sort of behaviours and patterns from when you're 0 to 7. And I sort of look back on how I parented my 2 children from 0 to 7, and I can't remember a lot of it, to be honest. But you hear stories about kids should be seen but not heard. Yeah, sort of say that I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy to be whatever in life, and there's a lot of that you actually hold within yourself, and they become habits. And they sort of stop you from, again, telling your stories and being the best that you can be. I'm seeing that a lot more. I deal a lot with women. 85 to 90% of my clients are women. And I just see when they start telling their story and having that environment, that safe environment to tell their story. And I think we spoke about it before, that there's shame that comes out of that. There's anger, that there's fear around that. But for them to release that story there, which they believe they held on to, and then sort of shifting that and going, well, I want a different life. I really want to speak up. I want to, tell people who I am and not be hidden away. And that's the sort of work that I love doing. But I'm just seeing that more and more, Ellen, and it's just something I wanted to, again, share that out, that, people really need to reach out. And it's something that they were programmed into them. It's not them. And they can really, with an awareness, they can actually go, that's a story there, and it's not even my story. A lot of times it was their mum and dad's story. And they've just held on to it. And for them to actually acknowledge that and going, I'm choosing a different story, and a story that serves me. And as I said, their confidence builds, their joy in life builds, and they actually just get out there and start being authentic and telling a great story.
Yeah, because I sort of feel like it was my parents' generation who actually coined the phrase and produced it just for kids like me, to be seen but not heard. That was one of the things. Be quiet. We want to know where you are. We want to be able to see you, but we don't want to hear you. And I think that was pretty strong when I was growing up. Not quite sure how much that's been in the future generations after that. What have you noticed, Chantal?
Well, I've got 3 daughters, and so I've got twins that are 15 and a half and a daughter that's 12 and a half. And I'm originally from South Africa, but I've got a bit of Italian in me, so you'll see my hands going as well. And in South Africa, it was very much seen and not heard, which is obviously difficult for me because I'm a big talker. So when I had my own children, it was something that I wanted to do, was encourage them to actually have freedom of speech. And I'm now regretting that. So I've actually encouraged them to give their opinion. And although they might sometimes not even have the emotional maturity to be able to understand some things, we've always encouraged it, as long as it's done respectfully. So I would say from my household, that's definitely not the case. However, 100%, a lot of the time when I get clients that come to me, some of them are extroverted and they have no problem going out and shouting their story from the rooftop. But there's a huge amount of people that are very introverted or are very scared or worried about what's going to happen or who's going to judge them when they do come out. And I think the most important thing there is that you only need to really say what you're comfortable saying. And as you become more comfortable in saying things, you'll start to get that inner strength to be able to do it. But also with social media, you know, in the olden days, it was just your community, but in social media, it is now private or even public, which means there is this fear of judgment or people, you know, judging you or condemning you or looking at you a different way. So you really do have to have, you know, inner strength to be able to be brave enough to be able to do that. But one of the things we can do is obviously make sure that we understand our settings properly on social media, so that if you are on Facebook, that you are either, you know, only have your friends can actually see what it is that you're saying, or if it's public, you understand what the ramifications of that is and how to protect yourself if somebody was to give you an inappropriate response. Because there are a lot of people out there that are very happy to give their feedback. They might not know you from a bar of soap, and they are quite happy just to respond and to give their opinion. So if we are going to do that, well then, and we are going to go onto it in social media, we need to first work on our own inner strength and our mindset and our own way to be able to deal with that. But we also need to know how to use our settings to protect ourselves if those things should happen.
Yeah, because I'm finding that you know, a lot of the comments that are coming up when people do respond, quite often I'm noticing people aren't reading what other people are saying. They're just making a comment, or they question something and it's right there on the screen. You know, you look at the person's profile, it's all there to be seen. They're on your page, but they're making comments. And so how much of it is it's just a desperate need to be able to say something and just say anything at all, just in the thing. But also, as you mentioned, Michael, that shame and everything else that's underneath it, the anger, because I suppose if you've been suppressed most of your life or repressed, then all of a sudden now you're going, I've got to get this out. And so you just say anything to get it out. But, you know, whatever you're saying about one subject over here is coloured by the anger you've got in the background.
Yes.
And so things come out, as I said, in an inappropriate way.
There's so much emotion attached to that, Alan, and as you pointed out, it can show up in probably a way that doesn't serve you. And you're just trying to tell your truth, or you're just trying to release something there, and the way it's verbalized, again, people take it the wrong way, which you can understand, and because it's coming from a space of anger, shame, sadness, whatever the case may be. It's not coming from a sort of a safe place where they can just feel really safe and just tell their truths, whatever that is. So there is work to do in regard to that. And as I think, Chantal, you said it before, that's that slow journey when people are ready. And it's not throwing them in the deep end and saying, tell us your whole story. It's just going, let's chip away at what your story is or what you're comfortable in sharing, and slowly move down that pathway where they're more confident, less angry, and then they come out the other side. And as I said, they're happy to tell their whole story and not from an emotional state. Yeah.
Because if you, if you tell an emotional story and it's one you've told before, all you're doing is anchoring yourself back into those emotions again. And you're re-feeling the whole thing and not really working through any issues. So, as you said before, resilience, Chantal, that, I think that's a major thing, because which comes back to your own self-esteem and everything else, your own self-value. Because when you do value yourself and you're feeling okay with yourself, you're less likely to come out with things that are inappropriate.
And it's a process. It's a process, and they come in at different stages, and what their understanding of it may be one thing. And then as they're working through it, the understanding changes as they start to work through the process. And then you can start to, confidently start to work through that. if you feel comfortable with it, telling your stories is an important part of getting people to know, like, and trust you on social media. So if you are going to go onto social media, even in a personal capacity or from a business perspective, if you want people to know, like, and trust you, we've got to make sure that firstly, we surround ourselves with like-minded people that are going to positively lift us up. And only when you feel comfortable, then start to reach a wider audience. You don't have to throw yourself in the deep end of straight away going and presenting your story to strangers. Some people try to jump too far, and you don't need to. I always say it's like a stone. You throw the stone in the center and it ripples out from there. So start with that.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Michael, you going to say something?
I was just going to say that I'm just starting a women's empowerment series, and I've got 6 inspirational women that are going to just tell their journey. They're comfortable in telling their journey. They're at a different space in life where they've had those ups and downs. And one of the women I'm interviewing is a visibility coach, which I found really interesting. I resonated with the word, and it was really, she teaches women around, as I said, visibility, to be seen, to be heard in the way that serves them, in a real authentic way. And it's just that, her stories that she's going to share in these series, and how that will help younger women and men for that matter, in regard to giving them a sort of a roadmap, a pathway. And again, it just goes back to storytelling, but for people that are already in that space. And it was interesting. I was going to do 6 women over 6 weeks, and there's more women that I've approached there that all want to be involved in it. So I think it's 12 women over 12 weeks.
So you've gone from people who weren't going to share their stories to now you've got plenty coming through.
It was interesting that I just reached out. So this is the interesting thing I found, and women really do want to tell their story, and what they've sort of been through, and how they became authentic leaders, and they're leaders within their own right. And I want to share one. So she was in the IT industry and became a leader more as a male. So had to have a lot of male traits to lead the team there, and it wasn't authentic. It didn't resonate with her. And then when she actually sort of dug a bit deeper and learned her true authentic collaboration, transparency, the accountability piece, but in a warmer way, and leading the teams now, it's totally different. So that journey itself has got a story to it. It's like amazing. But as I said, they're just in the space to share.
Excellent. So it's like the Campfire Project. We've got quite a few men who have told their story. The men have also found it easier as more men have actually told their story. So they've seen that, yes, it is a safe place that can come forward. And I think that's the whole thing. When the people out there feel safe in that environment, then they're happy to come forward. Men are a little bit slower because we like to have a bit more confirmation. And so, but as we've always had on the Campfire Project, the story you tell is as little or as much as you feel comfortable to tell. And it might be just a little bit now, but that gives you a chance to start to express yourself. And then when you're ready, come back and tell more. But it's like any muscle. It's, we've got to build it up.
Yes.
Develop it.
Yeah.
So it's not something we just throw somebody at the deep end and go, right, you're on stage, here's 1,000 people in front of you, tell your story, and then watch them crash and burn. No, not done that way. So it's got to be that safe environment.
And it also, as we've got to also understand that it does also affects the other people around us. So when I first had my first business, and I would go around telling the story about how I was overweight up into my 20s, and my mother was a single mom with 3 kids, and she worked all the time, and she was as skinny as a rake, and she could eat whatever she liked, and she just stayed as skinny as a rake. So nutrition was never an aspect for her. So this was the story I was telling. Nutrition never a requirement for her. She never had to worry about her health. She didn't exercise because she was skinny. She didn't have to. Whereas all of us were overweight. We all had high cholesterol, high blood pressure, and it was just purely from a lack of education. And that was the story I told. And the story I told offended my mother, and it offended my mother's mother, so my nonna, and my aunts, and they were like, you can't tell the story. It's incredibly disrespectful. And I said, well, I'm actually telling it from an inspirational perspective, because now in my personal training business, I'm all about educating people on ways to be healthy and fit. That was the first business I had. And, but they were really offended by it, So I had to reframe that story where I would just show gratitude for my mother and the opportunities that she gave us to be able to show me the importance of having education around food and health. And all I did was reframe it in something that was now going to be okay for me to publicly say as well.
Yeah, so in the first case, you've got your story that you're telling, but there's also the responsibility to the other people who may be in that story.
Yes.
And then putting it in a way in which it still is a benefit to the listeners as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
100%.
a really, really good observation, Chantal. And I've been starting to do some storytelling that's quite personal, and I'll do it on LinkedIn, but not Facebook, because there's more friends and family on Facebook, and I don't mind sharing that story, which has got a lot to it, on LinkedIn, where I don't know anyone emotionally, but on Facebook I won't. So it was just a great reflection that you just shared. Thank you.
Yeah.
As you
so true.
come from that, it is a case of finding that medium where you feel comfortable or safe to be able to share that story. But when you've shared your stories, how have you guys felt, Michael?
I felt a release. I haven't shared my story, and it's again, that's not telling your truths, not telling who you are, and it's all bottled up. So I did it on a radio show initially, and then the feedback I got from a number of people was amazing. So it's just been, I'm not going to talk for women, but I don't think men are great at being vulnerable. So, and I was very vulnerable in that scenario and emotional, but I was fully present and fully aware of what I was saying, and really wanted to get that message out there for the purpose, the pathway that I'm taking with empowering women. So it makes that journey more authentic, especially for women, to understand where I'm coming from.
That's probably a good point. Chantal, on what Michael's just said there, as far as having him feeling very vulnerable, getting quite a lot of positive responses from it. What's a women's point of view on a man who's being vulnerable?
Well, look, it's all about know, like, and trust, and it's perfectly okay. Not everybody has to like you. So especially, I always try to explain to people, if you go to social media, there are like-minded people that you can obviously add to your friends list and your environment, but you are reaching the public. And in the public, there are potentially people there that don't have the same values in you, as you. They're not really interested in what it is that you do, and they may or may not like you, and you have to get used to that. And that's okay. Like, as soon as you go on, you only want to be working with people who really want that and appreciate that anyway. And there's always someone for everyone. Like, I talk like this or whatever, so I'm not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. I had to get used to that. Some people may prefer a more timid coach, and that's okay. So, from any perspective, whether male or female, at the end of the day, it's all about getting people to know, the right people who have the same values as you, to know, like, and trust, so that you can be a gift to each other. So there can be an energy exchange between the two of you. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be your perfect and your truth. And it doesn't have to resonate, I always say in my social media strategies, we have to look at what are the objections you're going to get, because I actually prepare my clients for that. So an objection, and I mean, this is me just thinking off the top of my head, but you might get a big macho man going, this is ridiculous, a man telling a story like that. And we have to understand that there are some men who potentially would do that on social media. So I prepare my clients for, in that event, what would you do? It's not you, it's him, and it's absolutely okay. But how then would you handle that objection? How would you deal with it? And it could be as easy as blocking someone, responding politely, or just ignoring it completely. But you do need to protect yourself. I have a dickhead bubble. And my dickhead bubble I put up around me, and I strengthen my dickhead bubble so that when people say things, it just bounces off my bubble and it doesn't come inside of my bubble unless you're invited in. And it happens. I posted in a group last week. I was inviting people to a free webinar that I'm holding for business owners, showing them how to use Facebook. And this woman said to me, go and get a job. This is why I hate Facebook, because of trash like you. And I went, what? My dickhead bubble's going pew, pew, pew. Because it was like, you know, and I went onto her profile and had a look. And she's a middle-aged woman. She looked lonely. She looked sad. She looked miserable. And I felt genuinely sorry for her, you know, but it wasn't necessary for her to go and attack me like that. And that's her stuff, not yours. But we have to prepare ourselves for those sorts of things. And we don't have to be perfect to everyone, just the people that are meaningful for us.
Yeah, well, for me being a profiler, when I get something like that, I can't help myself. I don't respond. I just go and have a look, and I pretty much know that what that person's going through. And as you say, you end up feeling sorry for them. Yes. Because you know it's, as they say, when you point at someone, there's one finger pointing and there's three fingers pointing back, where the issues are. So when somebody challenges somebody they don't even know, then obviously it's something about that person who's doing the challenging in the first place, who's not dealing with things. And that's probably, as I mentioned before, the person who is doing things inappropriately in the way that they're responding. And so,
yeah, well, I just reported the person, so you don't even have to reply to them. I just clicked the three dots, reported the person to the group administrator, and the group administrator deleted the comment and potentially could have blocked her from there if she's done it multiple times. But that type of thing nowadays is just, it's not accepted. You know, they won't accept that kind of behavior. So you just don't let it into your dickhead bubble and just report. Or block or ban.
I've got to learn about this bubble, Chantal.
You can ask my daughters. They've got a dickhead bubble as well. I've encouraged them to all have dickhead bubbles.
It's interesting you say that, because I like to see myself as a thought leader in the financial planning industry around money coaching, beliefs and behaviours around that. And I'm challenging the planning industry in regard to still very product driven. And I had a client the other day who came to me. She had gone to a financial planner, and because she didn't have money to invest, but she was struggling with money, she wanted to learn some better principles around that. I said, we can't help you. Come back when you've got money. And she left there crying. She left there very upset, and because she thought no one could help her. And I shared that story on LinkedIn, and I've got a few comments back from the financial planning industry, but I accept that because I'm trying to create change. I'm trying to create a way that every Australian can connect with financial planners. So if I'm going down that pathway, I've got to accept that there'll be pushback.
Yeah. I often, my tip for that is I write something, and if I'm exceptionally emotionally charged, I'll write something and I'll just wait and I'll walk away and I'll come back and I'll reread it. And then I'll try and imagine how it's going to be received on the other side. And again, this is how I try to teach my clients how to deal with objections, how to deal with no, because you're putting yourself out there to strangers. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of judgment. So you have to have that dickhead bubble. You've got to be able to handle objections. You've got to understand your privacy and safety.
Yeah, as you say, it's a good idea to, once you've written it, to think of how the other people are receiving it. And then sometimes I've done that, and I've done it anyway. Because one of my hot spots has been around the quality of coaches and the number of people who are coaching. Because I know that they say the fastest growing industry on the planet's been technology, and we've been more connected by devices than ever before, but less connected from ourselves and each other. And because of that, everybody who's had an issue has become a coach as well. I used to say every man and his dog, but every man, woman and their dog has become a coach. And they're coaches of all types. I had one woman come to me who was said she was an inspirational coach, but all she was a very emotional person. And she was putting her emotions on everybody she dealt with. I couldn't see it. And it's like, being a self-professed clairvoyant without any skills. And so I have made the comments in the past. I put one up on Facebook that talking about coaches. I've been asked by a psychologist, what's your impression of all these life coaches? I said, don't worry about them. They're like prostitutes in a red light district. They're on every corner. And I did go a little bit further and then made another comment further down after I'd made a bit, talked about the coaching quality. But it is the case. Sometimes you'll just say things that need to stir things up to get reactions. But then it's how you handle those reactions that come back. So I have put up comments before that I knew were going to push a few buttons. People have come back to challenge it, and I've asked them, well, how would they actually handle that? And I've turned it into a conversation. So I've then drawn them into the conversation of them just being on the fence, I'd say in the peanut gallery, so to speak, throwing lollies at the screen, as we used to do at the movies when we were kids. So you get them up on stage, bring them in. There's ways in which to do it. But how many, because as we talked about this when we first came up, this was something that would be quite an interest to you, Michael. Have you found this going back through history, or is it something that's been increasing more lately with people less likely to tell their stories, holding things back?
I think it's just resonating more. I think we're a lot more stressed. I say a lot more stress out there just in the community, and that's not healthy in relationships or for people's health. So, and I think people aren't dealing with the stress. So again, going back to the cause of the stress. So 90% of illnesses are based on some sort of stress. So it's really understanding techniques to, one, calm the body, calm the mind, but also then look back at the story that's holding you back. And again, that's for you not to be able to speak up maybe, but understand the story, because the vast majority of the stories aren't theirs. And this is the learning that, and you're holding onto that story for whatever reason, the power of having that awareness and transforming that, letting that go, reduces that stress overall. But that's my key takeaways. I've just seen a lot of stress, a lot of people there, and as I said, the impacting relationships and health in a fairly big way.
Yeah. Right. Did I get that right, that you said that a lot of their stories aren't theirs?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you see that? Give us some examples.
Yeah, well, I'll give my example. So again, a bit of a vulnerability, but so with my father, so my twin sister and I growing up, and my father sexually abused her when she was 12 to 13, and then she ended up taking her life when she was 18 because she just couldn't get over that. Now, I had a lot of shame, anger, guilt around that. Should I have saved her? What could I have done? And I carried that through my life for a long period of time, and it made me sick. So I'm just saying it wasn't my story. I didn't have anything to be ashamed about or to be, well, yes, angry in a sense, but work through that. So, and that affected, as I said, my relationships, affected my health, and until I could work through that and be open and honest about that and understand that it had nothing to do with me, to release that shame and that what was holding me back. As I said, it wasn't my story to hold on to in a sense.
Yeah, so a lot of the shame, that's what I've been looking at. A lot of the shame that people seem to have seems to be perceived shame, or shame they've picked up. It hasn't been their particular situation. Like somebody who's been sexually abused, having shame around that.
Yes,
there shouldn't be any shame because there's nothing they've done to have brought that on in the first place.
Yeah.
That's the perpetrator's responsibility, not theirs.
And that's what I hear stories, as I said. So women, even in a relationship, so being treated poorly, they blame themselves there. What could I have done better? And they take that throughout the years. So, and that keeps showing up in different parts of their life, Helen. So it's just, some of the stories we go, it's our fault, or, we're responsible for it. Whatever you hold on to, that story there, and it's not serving you. And again, I'm a firm believer, the majority of the times it's not your story. And that's just to work through that and get them to understand that and to separate the story from them and to work forward. Yeah.
Sometimes people don't actually acknowledge or see the good parts of their story. So when clients are coming to me and we're trying to set up their stories, they'll go, I don't have an interesting story. I don't have one. There's nothing that I do that's interesting. And we go through a process and we'll talk about it. And the next minute I'm like, that's amazing. That's awesome. That's, not everyone's done that. That's inspirational. And to them, it wasn't. Like, it was just their story and they didn't see the magic in it, or they didn't see how it would inspire someone else. And they just don't see it. They take it for granted. So it is nice to be able to work through that with people, to be able to just show them, that there is magic in their story. But, what we're all saying here is that there is help out there, and you can get help to work through all these things. If you need help in anything, there are people there to help you. You don't have to struggle on your own.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing that, we've had a lot of the people the men I'd spoken to earlier on were reluctant to tell their stories. I'd heard a couple of people who spoke up front who had some really deep emotional things that happened in their life, and they thought, and the men after that were saying, well, I don't really have much of a story. but obviously it's something they've been carrying for some time. And as I keep saying to everybody, everyone's got a story, and that story is valuable because it's your story. And that's the first thing, is to be able to voice it as your story. And then, as you said, Michael, is then just go, okay, now I've voiced it, is that really my story? Or is that something that I've taken on because of my feelings about what had happened to somebody else?
Yes. Yeah.
When I first set up my first business, and I told you the story about being the personal trainer, so that story was easy to tell and easy to get clients, and it was a story I really felt passionate about, because I went from being overweight to losing weight, and then helping other people, and owning and managing gyms between South Africa and then Australia. But then when I transitioned into Facebook, I had all the objections, and some of them were in my own head, but a lot were from people, because when I started going out and saying that I'm this Facebook strategist now, people were going, well, how can you be that? You've got 20 years experience in the fitness industry. That's all you've ever known, and that's what you're doing. So I had to check my story, because I went, well, hold on a sec. Like, what's going to give me credibility? Like, what value? Like, how can I be this person? Because they're all saying I can't. And then when I looked back and actually worked out what my story was, how I'd actually taught myself Facebook to save my business when I didn't have a marketing budget. And when I got to that story, I went, hold on a sec, there's other people out there that are going to be inspired by this, that are going to go, that's me. Like, I don't have a marketing budget. I need help too. I need to learn how to do it myself. And when I started to see that, and see that there was then a connection, and there were more people like that, I went, you know what? I don't care about the objection or what I'm telling myself in my head. Exactly. At the end of the day, this story is inspiring other people. There are other people out there, and I could be helping them. They could be in the position that I was in, where I went from Centrelink to 6 figures. So, I can help those people. So I use my story, coming to terms with my story and the good parts of my story, to be able to connect with people.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is to, you're not all things to all people. And when you've got a title, people like, Facebook strategists, for instance, it depends on the person who's looking at, coming from their point of view of how they actually see that. But the people who are in the situation that you were in, but you've worked your way through, you are the strategist for them. And so knowing your audience and everything else, and talking to those people, because everyone's going, well, what do other people think about me? A friend of mine had put a post up on LinkedIn recently, and about me, talking about me being a leading authority in reading people. And everyone's been making great comments. And one person's come back and made a comment about having the title of leading authority. Where did that come from? And obviously from the little flow, because I've stayed back out of it, I'll let it go for a little bit. And then because I will think about the response, it'll go back totally unemotional, and it will show why I'm called that. And obviously I'm called that because of the media and everybody else in Disney Films and Gillette who gave me that title. So I've got the validity from there. But this guy's talking about a self-given label. So in that, I could then respond in a negative way. But where he's come from, I want to know about that. I'll stop and I'll think and go, okay, why has he come up with that? What's his background? What's important to him? Because the last thing I want to do, if this guy's hurting for some reason, I'm going to just grab him and slap him around. There's no way. Right?
Yeah.
Not my nature.
What's his intention? Like, what was the intention of it? That's what I always try to think, And sometimes it is just thoughtless, and sometimes it's just...
As I said, one finger pointing, 3 fingers pointing back. It's all about the person who's making the comment. So they made that comment. What is it about them? Where's their pain, etc.? I had a gentleman, what would it be? It was actually in 2016. It was just before I went to London with Gillette and Disney. He made a comment on Facebook. I'd made a comment. He commented on mine. I commented back, and I realised he was getting upset. So I took it offline on Messenger, sent him a message and said, look, why don't we have a chat about this? Yeah. I reckon we're saying the same thing. So by the time I'd finished that conversation on the phone with him, we talked for about an hour and a half. It got me to profile his kids. And then while I was in London, going through the museums through the day while I had some time, it's evening time over here, he's on Facebook again saying, when can I do your master course? So I turned him into a great client and a friend, simply because I took the time out to go, okay, where's his comment coming back from? Because if I react to somebody really quickly, that then is about me, not about them.
Yeah.
So again, thinking about what's being said, and anybody should be able to say anything. It's not like water off a duck's back. It's a matter of, if you understand that they're coming from a place of pain, that's all about them. It's got nothing to do with you. And being able to separate yourself from the emotion of it is extremely handy. I'll tell you what, it's taken a lot of practice.
They're reaching out for a reason. There's a reason they're reaching out.
And that's it.
They took the time to make those comments, whatever they may be.
So in doing that, this is, as I said, well, and by the way, if anybody were thinking, you know, taking from what I said before about coaches, the range of coaches, everything from absolutely fantastic. We've seen a lot of coaches in the Campfire Project. It's another reason why they all come on and tell their stories. They get credibility by showing who they are, what they've been through. So that, like Chantal, as you said, when building your business, you would actually use social media to save your other business. And that now is a worthy story and it's something you can coach other people through in the same situation. Because as I say, when you go looking for a coach, you find a coach who has been through what you've been through or going through, so they can help you go through it because they've been through it. They're coming from a place of experience. And the range of coaches are very broad, from being absolutely fantastic to being abysmal. So it's a matter of being
I was going to say, don't get me started on that, because it's like because it's like working with a business coach who says they'll get you to 7 figures, and yet they're living out of a camper van. And no, I don't mean any bad thing about a camper van, because if I had it my way, I would too. But basically, they just have never done it themselves. And over COVID, there are 3 people in my sort of online circle that are now saying that they're Facebook coaches, and they are charging, and they're calling themselves Facebook coaches. And many of those people have done some of my courses, not all of them, but have done some of my entry-level courses and are charging like, $50 an hour for coaching. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. I feel sorry for people out there, but at the end of the day, it's also business owners need to be, you got to have your wits about you. Everyone has to have the wits about themselves and make clever decisions, well thought decisions.
You're going to say, Michael?
I was going to say, and they've got to understand the right questions to ask. That's probably the critical thing. And as I taught a lot of people, because I know the financial planning area backwards. I did it for 20 years. So now I teach clients what to ask from a financial planner and really understand, because they don't feel like they can ask them. I said, go for it. This is about you, not about them.
That's it. You should be able to ask every question that you can think of. They always start, for me, it always starts with, well, this is what I'm going through at the moment. Tell me how you worked through it yourself.
Yes.
Tell me about your story. If they can't tell me a story, and because of the skills I've got, don't try and lie to me, because I'll pick it up. And you can very quickly figure out whether they've really walked that talk or not.
Yes.
Or is it just a story? Because we know there were so many motivational speakers out there, and then all of a sudden everybody was becoming a motivational speaker, and they're all following exactly the same process and everything goes. And you knew that there was no real experience in there. It was really just, they were textbook line. And so it's extremely important to find the best people. I know we've got off track as far as having a voice, but it's a case of, if you're going to find someone who's going to help you find your voice and go through your story and help you find out whether it is your story or one that you're perceived and you're carrying on that really is not yours to change or to fix. It's somebody else's story. You need the right sort of person, and therefore you need to find your voice, to ask them questions so they can help you find your voice.
And they're actually services now, because I got approached by one recently where there's companies that will write your story. They're like, don't worry, we'll just write your story. And I'm like, how are you going to write my story? Like, there's no way. Oh, we'll write a good one that's going to, and I'm like, no, thanks. I believe, you are your best unique selling point. So
that's it. The story's got to come from you. You might get someone to help you sort of improve the grammar or what it is, or to change the structure of the sentence. You might have a sentence that's 50 words long, and okay, you need to use a bit of grammar on it to break it down a bit to make it easier for people to read it and understand it. But it's still got to come from within. I know, because one of the things I do on LinkedIn, I look at somebody's profile picture, and then I look at their the text that they've written about themselves, and I can pretty well tell you whether they actually wrote that or somebody else has written it for them, because their face tells me everything. But there is now a thing called, what is it now? Crystal Knows, I think it is. It's an app on LinkedIn that will look at a person's profile and tell you their personality. Well, you're probably getting somebody else's personality, not the person whose site you're actually on, because somebody else has written it for them.
Don't get me started again, Alan. One of my things that I keep saying is you, the business owner, are the best person to run your social media. Yeah. Like, yes, there's, you know, a place for you to outsource some of your content in that. But when someone goes, I want you to do all my content and I want you to engage with my customers and return messages. And you know what? If you're selling a product, sure. But if you're in a coaching business and you're actually working with that person, you need to be handling your own leads, and you need to be coming up with your own content and showing your own passion, your own expertise, and bringing your own personality to it, you know, because you're going to be working with them.
I was approached by someone in marketing. They said, "I'll set up your story for the next 6 months." And I said, "I don't even know my story over the next 6 months. How does that work?"
That's it. You know, people have, you know, I've had some people say to me, well, look, you know, I'd like to get inside your head and I'll get all the information out, and I just start laughing. I go, is there a pair of gumboots here and a raincoat? Because it's a quagmire in there. You don't want to get in my head. You know, put these on before you go in, or you're going to be a mess when you come out.
That's funny.
But you're right. This is where the coaches come in. The content's got to be yours. Again, it's your story. And it's so important that we're able to tell that story. But then we might have, you know, a coach or a social media specialist who can then put that out for you and do all that work. But the content's got to be yours. Otherwise, they're putting out what they think you are. The client's getting what they think that you are. And the end result is what they're getting could not be that at all. And so now you've got the reputation.
Yeah, it's just fluffy, and fluff doesn't work on social media. So because it's social, for social media, when people are engaging and it's very, I'm an accountant, I do tax returns. If you've got 10 other accountants going, I'm an accountant, I do tax returns, it's not going to work because it's social. So you have to bring yourself into it. You have to bring you into it, which is so important. And yeah, it doesn't work. So if you're getting other people to write your content, they're probably writing it for the other people as well. So I had a client send me something last week. They're a gym, and they sent it to me and said, oh, this copywriter has said that they're going to write these blogs, and you can choose any blogs and they'll put it on the site. And I said, oh, well, for SEO, it has to be a new blog. It can't be a copied blog. And these are clearly being used in other gyms' posts. Like, it's...
Yeah, just say it's got to be fresh, but again, it's got to be from you as well.
From you, yeah.
And only you can actually write that. And the easiest way to write that is to know your story the best that you possibly can. And therefore, that's one of the tricks in starting to bring your story out.
And just invest in yourself to just be the best version of yourself. Like, it all starts with you. It all starts with you. I think sometimes people are too quick to do the quick fix. They're looking outside, and because, like you said, Michael, they're so stressed and, stressed and busy. People are so busy, but it's almost like they don't want to actually look or deal with anything. So they just keep charging ahead. But rather just invest in yourself and your own ability to be better and to do things better. And then you'll have your wits about you, and then you'll be able to authentically come across to people and build meaningful relationships and be confident and be able to protect your dickhead bubble.
I'll ask you now, what store do I go to? Where do I go into and up to the counter and say, have you got a dickhead bubble?
I think it's at Apple store.
Oh, they put an I in front of everything. I dickhead. I don't know if that's going to work.
Look, you're going to think of it now. Every time you're on social media and somebody does something, you're going to go, dickhead bubble, come on.
I think I will actually.
You will. It's all my clients do it now, so it really has helped them. So I'm all about empowering people to be able to do that. So, but you have to strengthen your dickhead bubble, because I had a lady, she's in PR, and she was talking about how she was coming under attack on social media, and it was really affecting her. And normally she's okay with it. And I just said, you have to understand, like I always encourage people to have a dickhead bubble. And right now your dickhead bubble's deflated. So you've got to, you know, and again, it comes down to health as well. Make sure your health is good, your wellness is good, your fitness is good, your nutrition's good, that you're getting sleep, and that you're working on your own personal development to keep that dickhead bubble strong. So when you come under attack, it just bounces off.
Yeah.
Pretty much a very important thing then. Know your story, be able to know your story, but also know if it is your story. Be able to voice that story, but the way to do that is to find a safe location to do that, have the right people around you who are listening to it for the right reason. And at the same time, then if somebody does take it the wrong way, don't respond to that with emotionally, step back for a moment and go, rightio, where are they coming from? Has this got anything to do with me or not? So it's not what I've said that's triggered them, it's something in them that's been triggered, and they would have triggered with anybody. And then just go back and go, rightio, well, I'll continue telling my story, and tell as much as you want to say or as little as you want to say, and that where you're comfortable, and just keep slowly pushing the envelope further out to where you can express yourself more and more. Because we know anything that we've done and we've practiced it and we've got better at it, then we always want to do more again. Trying to run a marathon when you've only just learned how to stand up is probably a bit too much. But if you learn how to then walk and then jog and then all the rest of it, you build that muscle up. So finding your voice is pretty much a case of developing a new muscle.
Yeah. And as you said, small steps. It's very much built around confidence. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's probably a good point to wrap it up on then in that case. I'd say thanks very much, Chantal, and thank you, Michael, for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. I really appreciate that, Alan. I had a lot of fun. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I don't know about you, everybody else, but I always have a lot of fun with these. So it's not about you guys, it's all about me.
It's the Alan show.
Well, it's all about the feelings we get from it. And I'm told by a lot of people who are watching these videos that they get a lot out of it. And, you know, the people who come onto the one-on-ones and also into the panel discussions tell me they get a lot out of it as well. As you've just said, how much you appreciate it, Michael. And I get a lot out of it. So this is a place where there's absolutely win, 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 win all over the place. Yeah. So, and it's an example of find, not just necessarily in this group, but to everybody who's listening, find other groups, other people, you know, where you feel comfortable, you know you're going to be, be valued and respected, and start telling your story. Tell as much as you feel comfortable to say, and then when you get used to that, tell a little bit more. And that way, your authentic self will come out instead of the emotional self that gets pushed when some troll has a go at you inappropriately. So it's all about you taking control of yourself. But again, guys, thanks very much for being here. And to everybody who's been listening in, we'll see you on the next Campfire Project. Bye for now.
Thanks, Alan. See you, Chantal.
Yeah, thank you.